Friday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of Browns to talk about. We'll talk a little bit more about Elijah Moore. Heard a lot about him yesterday. But we begin with a different wide receiver, another wide receiver that the Browns have added to that room, as they say. Mary Kay Cabot reports Browns are signing Marquise Goodwin to a one-year deal. And again, that goes with Elijah Moore, the couple of veterans that the Browns add to the existing wide receiver core for Deshaun Watson. Let's welcome in Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Jared, we had heard they met with Marquise Goodwin. A little bit of an older guy, but gotta like it. It's a skill set they didn't have until they acquired Elijah Moore.
Yeah, I mean, you can never have enough speed in the NFL. 4.27, his 40 in 2013. Like, that is a player who can change the dynamic of the game and really change the dynamic of the field. Donovan Peoples-Jones is fast. Elijah Moore is fast. Amari Cooper is a savant route runner. David Njoku is every bit huge, fast, can leap. Like, all of a sudden, you have a dynamic offense with players all over the field that can do a lot of things. And we haven't talked about David Bell, Michael Woods, possibly even Isaiah Weston, Harrison Bryant, Jordan Akins. All of a sudden, that offense has a lot of weapons, and it's going to be really interesting what Kevin Stefanski wants to do with that spread of weapons.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And you should do that if you feel you have an elite quarterback. Go give him the weapons to make the offense elite. And by adding those two guys, I think that's what the Browns were thinking. We heard from Elijah Moore yesterday. One of the things he talked about was the feeling that he got from the front office as well as quarterback Deshaun Watson.
Kind of just that we're, excited to be all together now. You know what I'm saying? That they had their eyes on me, and it just feels good to be wanted, So I'm just blessed to be here, man. I'm blessed to be at Brown, and I'm going to get this all I have.
And when you talked to Deshaun yesterday, what was his reaction? What'd he tell you?
Everybody's just super excited. It's kind of all the same responses. We all got to, get together, of course, but everyone just smiles up, So that's all I can ask for.
And again, Jared, that's a guy that the Jets just, for lack of a better term, just didn't use, and he wasn't happy about it. So that's why he's happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, when you go from Zach Wilson to Deshaun Watson, you're going to be happy. And he's a player that deserved to be a second-round pick. If he was a little taller, would have been a first-round pick 2 years ago. Still 22 years old, will turn 23 soon. He's got a lot of upside. I think what's really interesting is he's a type of player kind of similar to Travis Benjamin, where a lot of people look at his size and think he's kind of only a slot guy. But it's very clear for how he was used and how he runs routes that he can be an outside guy as well, just because his speed, like he talked about, you can't tackle what you can't touch. And so just a really exciting guy who can win quickly. But he's the guy that can take the ball 60, 70 yards, right? He can get those bubble screens. He can get those quick slants, but he can also run those 9 routes, those deep post routes, and really make a difference for this offense, and just wasn't used. So Andrew Berry swoops in, doesn't lose a draft pick, just moves down, into the 3rd round to pick up a player who was a 2nd-round pick last year. A lot of value in that decision.
Yeah, I'm with you. And basically, he moved back 32 spots to pick Elijah Moore up, a guy that has some, upside, was a 2nd-round pick. This chart gives a pretty good idea of just how well Andrew Berry is maximizing the resources. 6th best, and that doesn't necessarily take into account everything. But, man, every year you at least understand the plan if you do the in-depth coverage of the Browns that we do. Doesn't mean it's always going to work right, but they pretty much addressed, Andrew Berry pretty much addressed every area that you said, man, they really need to improve this area.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And when you look at those trades, last year they traded out of the 2nd round. John Mechie, who the Houston Texans selected, turned into Martin Emerson, Perion Winfrey, and Cade York. Like, those are the kind of deals that you see from Andrew Berry. He tends to value things differently. Even in a lot of his different trade down, trade up, there's a lot of pick swaps, those kind of things. So he keeps his amount of selections if he wants to, but he's able to really manipulate everything in a way that allows him to have a lot of bites at the apple. And again, when you do that, you can make some mistakes. It doesn't mean you want to make mistakes, but you can. And so if you're not going to hit on an Anthony Schwartz, you need to hit on a Donovan Peoples-Jones in the 6th round. You need to be able to do some of those kind of things. And so this offseason, then you add on top of that some of the player trades. The count I have right now is they've either retained or brought in 17 new players, right? This is a new roster in a lot of ways. And probably even more important than the players that they brought in is Jim Schwartz, Bubba Ventrone. All of a sudden you have leaders, you have people that you can really trust, proven quality on the defense and on special teams. And now you're providing them with their kind of players. It all just kind of works together. Joe Woods basically decided defensive tackle was not that important, so they didn't really invest in it. This offseason, 3 are added, and we haven't even got to the NFL draft.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that defense comes together. That's going to be the important thing. How quickly can they get on the same page? All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time in today's show.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Leonard, and I'm a Canadian, and I'm calling from Okinawa, Japan. Really enjoyed last season. I just want to make one comment. I noticed throughout the whole season that a lot of people kept talking about they need another receiver. The Browns need another receiver. And I just don't think enough love and respect went out to Peoples-Jones. Every game I watched, he made clutch catches, clutch plays, very few drops, and I don't know, I just think a little bit of appreciation should go his way. Although I am happy to see we got a bit more speed with Elijah Moore. Still, Peoples-Jones needs a pat in the back, if not some more. Thanks for taking my call. Enjoy the program.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jared, I thought they needed to add a receiver. It wasn't anything that against anybody that was here. And I've gone on record. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is the type of receiver all good teams have. Underappreciated, doesn't light it up running. I mean, he's fast enough, but he's not a guy that's going to beat the defense with his speed. But, man, if you need 6 yards, he usually runs a 6.5-yard route.
Yeah, I think, I always said the Browns didn't need another wide receiver. And the only reason for that is when you paid your quarterback $230 million, he better help your receivers get better, right? So at some level, the Jerry Jeudy trade, giving away a second-round pick and more, and having to sign him to a large contract would really make it very difficult for them to do a lot of other things. That's where someone like Donovan Peoples-Jones comes in. That's where the Elijah Moore trade makes a lot of sense, right? He didn't lose a draft pick, and you're not paying him a ton of money. I actually think Peoples-Jones is more likely to be a training camp extension because the Browns do respect what he does. Now, that extension might be 10, 11, $12 million, which is kind of the going rate. The Juju Smith-Schusters, the Jacoby Myers, that's kind of the rate that they were at because he's exactly what you talked about. He's going to get that 6 yards, but there are times he's got a lot of straight line speed. The problem is he's a really high-waisted player, so he's not getting in and out of his breaks quickly. He doesn't really scare people on double moves, those kind of things, but he can get down the sideline. And he's really made a lot of great contested catches. I think he is somebody the Browns value. I think for Browns fans, it's tough. Hasn't had a 1,000-yard receiving season, really isn't putting up the touchdowns. And 2 seasons ago, Odell Beckham Jr. and some of those guys in training camp were just lauding him as if he was going to be this breakout star, and it really didn't happen. So those expectations got a little too high. And I think this year you may not see the numbers, but part of that is what we already talked about. A lot of weapons for this offense. Deshaun Watson's really going to move the ball and spread it around the field. I'm still not sure he's going to get to 1,000 yards, but he still might earn and deserve that contract.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, if the team is winning and he's a part of that, that's generally what happens. This is interesting. This is from the Bleach Report. Every NFL team's smartest off-season decision. And for the Browns, they go with hiring defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz. Run defense is Cleveland's biggest problem area this past season, ranked 25th, both rushing yards allowed and per carry, almost 5 per carry. Every time I read that, I cringe. This smart hire by Cleveland, Schwartz is an experienced coach who should be able to quickly improve the Browns' defense up front. I liked the hire when it was made. The more I see, leads me to believe he has some input in what they're doing up front as well.
Yeah, I mean the collaborative model that the Browns use, you just absolutely know that they are talking to each other. Everything seems to make sense. And so the Juan Thornhill to get a real true free safety, John Johnson, a good player, just not being used correctly. Thornhill and Grant Delpit, like that is something that split safety is something Jim Schwartz runs a lot. So he wanted both of those guys to be able to be back there, do some coverage things, but also have the ability to come forward. But Juan Thornhill gives you a little bit more range, is a playmaker with the ball in the air. And then we've talked about, Ogunaya Okoronkwo is a really exciting, especially the wide nine. Jim Schwartz likes to have his defensive ends a little bit farther off the offensive tackle. So just giving, I love his nickname 007 with the number 7, giving him the ability to just attack quarterbacks, having the linebackers come downhill. Everything with Jim Schwartz is going to make sense. And kind of one of the exciting things is most likely his head coaching days are over. So this is a defensive coordinator you can expect to be around 2, 3, 4 years, where Bubba Ventrone, he might be gone next year or the year after as a head coach. Schwartz's ability to teach his players as well as to make sure his coaches know what he wants is just something you cannot replicate. And so just an amazing hire for the Browns and should easily upgrade their defense, especially against the run.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, the personnel that they're bringing in, let's hope it comes together quickly enough because it could be interesting. This I disagree with, but let's take a look at it. Post-free agency power rankings. This from the 33rdteam.com, which is the former NFL executives, or Mike Lombardi is involved in that. They have the Browns down at 20. They have the Packers, who are reportedly going to be Jordan Love's team, ahead of them. Steelers at 11. Again, nationally, I get it. It's with the Browns, the way they've been the last couple of years, it's probably I'm not going to fall for that again. Prove it to me before I believe it.
Yeah, I think the reality is all of us know no matter what they do, it all comes down to Deshaun Watson, right? Like at a root level, when you're paying a quarterback like that, it doesn't matter what else you add. If he's not really good to great, everything else is going to kind of fall apart, especially in the AFC with all the quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is probably coming to New York. Lamar Jackson is still kind of in limbo, but odds are he'll stay in Baltimore. There's just a lot of really good to great quarterbacks in the AFC. So I understand you got to prove it to me. On the other hand, that's fine to have them low, but you look at some of those teams, the New Orleans Saints, Derek Carr has not been that good with the Las Vegas Raiders. They're not exactly that team. You talked about Pittsburgh, again, winning record, but not a team that really scares you last year. Kenny Pickett didn't look that good. I think it's just an overreaction to Deshaun Watson didn't look great last year. Wasn't really throwing the ball downfield much, and everything looked a little scattered. So prove it to me. I still think it's a little bit of an overreaction to that. The good thing is it doesn't actually matter.
Yeah, I'm with you. That was my point exactly. They get to go out on the field and prove those people wrong. Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll also take a look at a mock draft that Jared has done after that trade back to acquire Elijah Moore into the 3rd round. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave. Greg calling up here from the Oregon coast. I feel strongly that the Browns are going to win at least 10 games this season and make it to the playoffs. I have several reasons for believing this. Number one, I know last year we lost 10 games, and I blame that on poor coaching. Our poor coaching staff had more talent than they knew what to do with. So Andrew Berry has fixed that. Our new coaches are known for getting the best out of their players. Number two, I know Watson didn't look that great the last 6 games of last season, and I expect him to return to form. I think part of his troubles were adjusting to the speed of the game. I think it was a little more than he was ready for, and it threw off his timing and made him look uncomfortable. And number three, we now have a lot of talent. So I think it's time for the coaches to turn our boys loose, and we finally get to see our big dogs eat. Get some, Browns. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jared, I was a guy that thought they were going to have about 10, 11 wins last year and the year before. But again, I can't argue with the rationale that the caller had.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. Last year they should have had 10 wins, and I'm not a guy who says they should have a lot of things. But quite frankly, recover an onside kick with the Jets, make a field goal with the Chargers. Literally, those games are over. Like, this isn't something else could happen. So those are 2 more wins. And then you either need to beat the Atlanta Falcons or the New Orleans Saints in a blizzard. Like, those are 2 games. You got to win one of those. And they didn't. And so very easily last year they're at 10 wins. And I'm not making excuses. But when I look at a roster that has added Jim Schwartz, Bubba Ventrone, and all of the talent that we're talking about, that last year very easily would have won 9 games, should have won 10 or 11 games. It's not hard to see how they should get to that again next year. It just makes logical sense. This isn't hope and wish. This is literally looking at what happened last year where Jacoby Brissett was fine, but wasn't doing a ton. Nick Chubb had to carry a lot of the load, about 1,500 yards rushing. Now you add all this talent to a team that should have been, should have 9 and 8 last year, easily could have been 10 or 11 wins. It just makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously, it's optimism, but it's based off of just last season and everything they've done since.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I know you wrote an article about this roster space, and do you think the Browns trade up and trade down? Take us through that and just kind of your thought process in that article. Again, Dawgs by Nature is where you can read Jared's stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is right now, when I look at their 53-man roster, if you include, Josh Dobbs, Kellen Mond, Jerome Ford backing up Nick Chubb, Demetric Felton, John Kelly being the third running back, at a very root level, and this is including either Felton or Kelly, there's about 5 roster spots available. And the Browns have 8 draft picks and also normally sign somebody pretty high in undrafted free agency. So that means to me one of 2 things. Either they're going to move back up, they're going to use some picks, get into the late second or even mid-second round, or they're going to move out. So they have 2 picks in the 4th round, 2 picks in the 5th round. They have the 2 in the 3rd. Those are picks that if you trade a 4th round pick this year, you get a 3rd round pick next year. And right now the Browns only have 2 picks in the first 4 rounds next year. So I think it just makes sense looking at the roster construction. He's brought in 12 new players to this roster, that adding another 8 draft picks and possibly some undrafted free agents just isn't really a good use of his assets. So moving up to get somebody who fell in the 2nd round, this is a really interesting draft for different types of wide receivers and defensive linemen. I think that would make a lot of sense in his aggressive nature, or just move out and kind of give yourself a little bit more flexibility in 2024's draft where you're a little bit more limited in draft capital. It just doesn't make sense to keep adding players to a roster that you either aren't going to keep a free agent you signed or a player you just drafted. It starts to get a little murky when the numbers keep going.
All right, let's take a look at the mock draft that you did after the Elijah Moore trade. Again, this is Jared Mueller's mock draft from Dawgs by Nature. Take us through the 2 third-round picks you think the Browns might be looking at least in this mock draft.
Yeah, so again, there's some really great simulators that really help us with our process now, especially with the Browns not having a pick until number 74. It's hard to guess what the other 73 would be. The simulators really help. This one I use Pro Football Network, very helpful simulator. So Jack Campbell, not sure he's going to be here, but linebackers don't tend to get the value that maybe they should at this point in time. So he's a player I think could be a long-term fit next to JOK. I think he's someone who can learn from Anthony Walker. They don't really have that player, right? Everybody they brought back this year or signed at the linebacker position is a one-year deal. Outside of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, pretty much the rest of the linebacker group is going someplace next year or needs to be re-signed. So Jack Campbell gives you that leader, someone who could step in pretty quickly if you needed him to, gives you some depth. If Taki can't play right away, returning from his injury last year, I think it'd be a steal in the third round. I also think Keanu Benton would be a steal for the team as well. We have him listed as a defensive tackle just for generic language. He's really more of a nose tackle, a 0 or a 1 technique. This is a player who is going to take up 2 blocks. He's going to take it up with his size and strength. He can anchor against the run, but he's also able to press the pocket. And when you have a Myles Garrett and you have 007 coming off the other side, you, especially in the wide 9, you need someone who's going to kind of create chaos in the middle of that pocket for the quarterback. And so for me, Benton, he's a player that I would have looked at with that second round pick or in a small trade down. But just given the fact he is really probably more likely to be a kind of 2-down player, first and second down, I think you can get him here in the third round. And all of a sudden you have that player that's going to be there for years to come next to Dalvin Tomlinson. Him and Perion Winfrey can kind of work together a little bit. I think it's just a really, really good fit for what the Browns have done so far, continuing to beef up that defensive line that, again, doesn't have a lot outside of Winfrey, doesn't have a lot of real young players that we believe they're going to develop over the last few drafts.
Let's take a look at, again, 2 picks in the 4th round. And, again, you go on the defense side of the ball. Take us through what you were thinking here.
Yeah, Will McDonald's a real light player. Again, another player that I'm not sure. He's a little bit older and he's a little bit lighter. So when you're looking at kind of trying to get an idea of where a player is going to be drafted, if you have some exceptions, and I don't mean the good exceptions, a little bit of an older player and a little bit lighter, that means he might fall more than you might think. And so people might know the name of Will McDonald from Iowa State, a really nice pass rusher. But again, he's not a player who you're likely to see kind of that second round grade on just based on his age and some of kind of his physical traits. But in the wide 9 scheme is a player who can get after the quarterback. So you move Myles Garrett inside and all of a sudden you have this speed rusher coming off the end who I think can make a lot of noise. Again, when you move a Benton off the field, move Garrett inside. The real kind of star for me is the second, 4th round pick. A guy I got to spend about 20 minutes with at the podium at the Combine. Keitrell Clark is a player that I believe Browns fans are going to fall in love with. Loves watching UFC, loves kind of the battle that it takes, and is a slot corner. Like, this is a guy that he talks about having a chip on his shoulder, talks about his size, talks about how he was under-recruited. He just makes plays. He was one of the best cornerbacks at the Shrine Bowl. He is going to fight for every single situation. Kind of like Elijah Moore said, I'm going to give you my heart and soul. Keitrell Clark has put his heart and soul on the field at Louisville. He's a player that he's my guy. Like, if there's one guy in this draft that I'm going to get on the table for, it is Keitrell Clark.
Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jared.
Absolutely, brother. It's always good to see you.
All right, Jared Mueller, make sure you check him out. You know we use his mock drafts and mock free agent signings. Always really good stuff with Dawgs by Nature. Check him out. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Lance Reisland with a film breakdown of one of the Browns' new wide receivers. We'll take a look at what Elijah Moore can do on tape. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greenie Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop live theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at greenysportscards.com.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Big news a couple days ago, Elijah Moore traded for. We've heard from Elijah Moore. It is time to take a look at what Elijah Moore can do in this Browns offense. A video film breakdown. Whenever we do that, we turn to Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. And Lance, we had talked about a receiver like Elijah Moore, and I don't know about you. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I like the acquisition. He's a guy that has the skill sets they need and is still kind of young and developing.
Yeah, when I looked at some of his film from Ole Miss and with the Jets, and the first thing that comes to my mind is his ability to get easy yards. And I believe the Browns are going to use him in the slot. He had 80 receptions for just under 1,000 yards, kind of modest numbers. But if you look at his last year at Ole Miss, when they used him like I think the Browns will use him, he had 89 receptions or 86 receptions for over 1,000 yards. He had 189 career receptions in college. Played for Lane Kiffin, so he understands spacing and numbers and vertical game and different routes. And I think in the slot, he's just going to be absolutely what the Browns need in terms of those easy yards, which we talked about.
Yeah, he comes from Mississippi, and people who went to Mississippi, well, DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown both went to Mississippi. Different type of receivers, but that passing game at Ole Miss is pretty legit.
Well, yeah, Lane Kiffin, you know what? And what I like about what Lane does is he gets the ball in space. So he's more of a touch guy than he is a position guy. So you're going to see on film where at Mississippi, he was where the ball was going to be. So he was outside, inside. He's used on jet sweeps, RPOs. He's a touch guy. He's not a position guy. And I really like that in terms of getting the ball to your best players. And sometimes teams can take positions away, but it's really hard to take players away. And if you can figure out a way to get touches to certain guys, they're electric in space. And he's a guy he's not sudden stoppy, but he's real fast. He's a 4.3 40 guy. He had an extremely fast 6.67 three-cone shuttle. So he's got short area burst. He's very good running after the catch. He's very good at all three phases. He's very good at releasing. He's good at the catch point, even though he's only 5'10", and he's very good with run after catch. And in that slot, I think he's going to be dynamic.
All right, let's take a look at some of the film that you pulled, some of the video that you pulled here. And this is one of the things that you and I have talked about. It's easy yards for an offense.
So I used to call this a gift or a fire screen. And basically what it is that Jets are going to run zone up to the right. And everybody's running zone except for the quarterback and Elijah Moore here. So the Jets are going to get an 8-man box from the Patriots because they're in 12 or 21 personnel. So instead of running into a hard look there, he's just going to take a little fire screen, a little alert screen here. And this is an easy 14 yards. And these little look screens, they're attached to the run game. So when I think about the Browns running their gap and their outside zone schemes, it's very easy just to attach this. Put them in the slot, run those RPOs. Nothing changes for anybody. The offensive line doesn't have to pass protect. No one's doing anything different. The only two people that know are the quarterback and the receiver. This is what he brings. Breaks a tackle, gets 14 yards. This is a classic example of easy yards where the Browns would block that, and they would block it well, and they'd get 4 to 6 yards. This is an easy 14 yards without having to do much.
Yeah, and you see there, even if that initial guy makes the tackle at the line of scrimmage, he's going to fall forward and get 4 yards. And 4 yards on it was 2nd and 5, so you're looking at a 3rd and 1. Those are the kind of things that you and I had talked about, kind of the Browns needing is find somebody that can get you 4 or 5 yards just by getting the ball to them in space.
Well, the thing that guys do like that, like the Tyreek Hill, these guys are eye candy, and I used to term it as eye candy in terms of the defense is going to have to locate them on every single snap. So whether you run a jet sweep or throw these little look screens or run option routes or whatever you're going to do with these slot receivers who are good in space, the defense has to account for them. So every time they move, the defensive eyes go to these guys. And whether they make the play or not, it's the idea that the defense is going to have to account for them. And usually when they're accounting for them, their feet aren't moving. And if their feet aren't moving, Then they can get blocked inside in the run game. It just adds something. If you look at the Rams and the 49ers, all this motion and movement, that's all to kind of get the defense to, have their eye candy so they're not focused on what they should be focusing on.
All right, let's take a look at the second clip that we have here. Tell us what you see on this one with Moore.
Well, the reason I like this, I broke down a bunch of film. So this is a classic boot or waggle that the Browns foundation of Stefanski's pass game. So this is actually the second level. You're going to see the tight end on the flat. And the thing about Elijah Moore is he can run all three levels. So you have a guy who can run, get in the flat, and be like a running back. He can catch the second level here, which is a drag. He can also be the guy over top. He can run all the route tree. But this is a classic slot route or tight end route. Either one can run it, and you've seen Njoku a bunch of times. This is the second level of their basic level scheme. This is a scheme everybody runs. Stefanski runs it as well as anybody in the NFL, and he's a guy who can run all three levels. So I really like this. You see him in college and in the pros. He's been at all three levels, something the Browns really need.
And you see how wide open he is there. Imagine the Browns running that with David Njoku as the tight end at that, so he's going to get even more attention than either Tyler Kroft or whomever the Jets had at tight end. All right.
Absolutely. And that run game opens it all up. So
let's take a look at the third one, another different way that you can use Elijah Moore.
So you see him up here at the top of the 50-yard line. As the play runs again, you'll see it's a whip route. So this would actually be this is a pass route, a drop back. But this would actually be the type of route he would run on the levels concept if he was the bottom level. And again, you can get lined up against a linebacker. He's very, very, very good space. So he puts his foot in the ground. He's going to run an explosive whip route. And it's not a huge gain, but it's enough. And once again, it's easy yards. It's an easy throw. He breaks the tackle here. He gets a first down. It's 3rd and 5. He's very good in these little under routes, these little option routes. Again, he puts such stress on the defense because of his raw speed. And with David, with Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper, this slot the Browns got, he's going to be very, very productive for the Browns. And this is a classic route he'll run for the Browns. A little whip route on a backer or a strong safety, and he's going to be very tough to cover.
Yeah, and you see some of the change of direction there, which he's not really known for, but if you put a linebacker trying to cover him, you see the result there. Again, this is a guy that fits with what you and I had hoped the Browns would go out and find.
Yeah, he's that guy in space. He's that slot receiver in space that's going to get you easy yards. He can do so many different things. He's not a stop and start guy. He's a sudden burst guy. And I kind of looked at his 40 time and his, three cone shuttle and his 20-yard shuttle. And those are all at the, 90% or above. So he gives you that elite short area burst, which is what you need. He does have raw, top end speed, straight line speed with the 4.35, but he's even better. He gets the top speed really quick. And that's going to be so helpful when you're running those RPOs and those jet sweeps and those option routes and those under routes. Again, his change of direction is very good. So you think, again, with the Browns now with Watson, they're going to have scramble drills. So there's a lot he's going to do getting the ball in space that's going to help Cleveland.
Yeah, and the other thing, the fourth and final clip we'll look at is another thing that you've talked about, the motion, the jet sweep.
So this is my eye candy. So every time he comes in motion, so all you got to do is run this once. So this is a 12-yard pickup. This is not a huge gain. This is not a touchdown. But what this does, now it's on high alert for defense. So all week during defense meetings, you got to locate more. You got to locate him on the jet sweeps. Now, everything that's run off jet sweeps is now available. So every time he goes in motion, the Browns could be running a gap scheme or a counter scheme, and those linebackers are now looking at the motion. And when you're looking at the motion, your feet aren't moving, and then you block easier. So what he does, he gives you a great gadget play here. It's just a little jet sweep, but now he becomes a priority for the defense during their meetings all week and trying to locate. And when you're doing that, you're not working on the run game of Chubb or stopping Amari Cooper outside or Njoku. So he just adds so much work for a defense during the week. A lot of people don't understand this guy causes a defensive coordinators big headaches because of all the different things he's going to do.
Yeah, and the other thing that he gives you, and I agree with you, I think the Browns are going to play him predominantly in the slot just because they need that. He can flip outside because of that straight line speed, and he can be a problem where defenses have to locate if you move him from the slot outside.
Yeah, he runs the entire route tree, and that was his time at Ole Miss. Ole Miss did a great job of putting him wherever they needed to, whatever route was available, depending on the coverage you're going to see. There's easy ways, not easy ways, but there's certain ways you can get people off press coverage. His size, at times, he can get pressed because of the corner's length and height in the NFL. But you can keep him on the move. You can make him a Z receiver, which means he'll be off the ball, which makes him a lot harder to jam. He can be on the move. You're right. He can play 1, 2, or 3 strong. He can run the entire route tree from both the slot and the outside. He's got a lot of upside for the Browns.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Lance, thanks very much.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland with an interesting film breakdown of exactly what Elijah Moore brings to that Browns offense. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon on the other side of the break. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's take a look at this unit grades. This is a tweet from Mike Clay. So the Browns overall are ranked 9th. They are ranked 7th in offense, 13th on defense. And you see the position groups. Wide receiver position group still 1.5. That's below average. Offensive line 3.9. It's on a 4.0 scale, so that's pretty good. Interior defensive line, even with the upgrade, they're still grading them low at a 1-1, and they grade the safeties at a 1-3. Explains a little bit of that. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. Casey, I think that's a little low, but I guess I'm a little biased.
Well, if you look at that 1.1 for the defensive tackle room, I think that just speaks to they still have work to do in that area. I think if you're looking at this team across the board, that would probably be where you'd add the next addition, a startable player to be defensive tackle. 1.3 for the safeties, that's probably fair because outside of Delpit and Thornhill, you don't know what the rotation is going to be. You know, everything's projection at that point. But he got the strengths right. If you look at cornerback, he graded those very high, as well as the offensive line. And those are the two areas that are complete right now that don't need much added to them, if anything.
Yeah, and again, whenever people get upset with the national narrative, the context nationally, you need to remember, last 2 years, Browns have underperformed. So nationally, it's going to be show me.
Yeah, it's going to be great on a curve until they do start to show you, you know. And that's what Mike Clay does for a living. He makes prognostications across the league, every player for fantasy. And so, you know, if you're just taking that outside context and looking in, you have to wonder, did the Browns do enough at defensive tackle to make that big of a difference? And what does Thornhill matter? You know, these are all projections. And, you know, this team still has strengths and weaknesses, just like every team in the NFL.
All right, let's take a look at this comparison chart between the 2018 to 2020 Eagles defense and the Browns from 2020 to 2022. Now, these aren't random years. This was when Jim Schwartz was the defensive coordinator for the Eagles. Last time he was truly the defensive coordinator in charge of a defense. So you see significantly more man-to-man than the Browns played, significantly less zone, you know, 58% to 70%. 4 or fewer coming, 82%. 5 even is a little bit less. And then the blitz is a little bit more, but not anything crazy. When you look at that, the reason you look at that is that'll give you an idea of what you are likely to see if Jim Schwartz has the personnel he wants.
And if you're a Browns fan looking at that, you see that uptick in man coverage, that's got to make you happy. That's going to put these cornerbacks in their best position to have success in the league. And then, like, you look at the blitz numbers, he'll blitz more than what we've done in the past. but he's not blitz happy. He's not going to do it for the sake of doing it. If he can't get pressure with his 4, he'll simulate it other ways. But I think that when you look at that man coverage, that is the biggest indicator of what this team's going to be, how this team's going to be different.
And quite frankly, it plays to the strengths of the cornerbacks that you invested in and drafted, which I think you and I, people probably got sick of me hearing me say that they're not putting Denzel Ward in a position to be successful. Jim Schwartz is going to put the corners in a position to be successful. And you know what? The guys they have, they're probably like, thank you.
Yeah, it allows them to play aggressively and not passive. You know, you're not going to see them 7-8 yards off the ball that often. It's going to be someone like Denzel. He's going to get a chance to mirror the wide receiver he's across from, and that's his biggest asset as a cornerback, is his ability to be twitchy in tight space and mirror the receiver, and that's just how he likes to play. Then you have someone like Emerson who actually likes to play facing the quarterback. He likes to have eyes on the quarterback so he can break on undercutting stuff. You know, so there's going to be different ways that they can use this, but they all excel at man coverage.
And, you know, we talked about this too. You couldn't really define what the Browns' defense was the last couple of years. I think you're going to be able to put that into words pretty early in the season this year.
Yeah, they need to find that identity, and that identity needs to be aggressiveness.
And I'm guessing from everything you expect of Jim Schwartz, that's what it will be.
Yeah, hallelujah. They finally heard our cries for help. Get us some aggressive defensive play calling.
All right, this from Dog Pound Daily. 3 reasons the Browns could still disappoint in 2023. Number 3, and this one's pretty obvious. A lot of new pieces have seen big changes are made. Time is needed for them to figure out how to work together. They need to figure that out pretty quickly. Number 2, the Browns' overall depth, still a concern. And number 1, Deshaun Watson needs to prove that he is still Deshaun Watson. And I think if number 1 happens, everything else kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, it alleviates a lot of the nerves if Watson's playing at his former level. When I look at that list, you know, with the new pieces, well, defensively, other than Juan Thornhill, it's going to be pretty cut and dry because it's not going to change defensive line responsibilities all that much. So the communication issues on the back end, getting Thornhill up to speed, I don't think will be a problem at all. For me, it's the timing of the wide receivers. You got some new wide receivers in this room, so training camp's going to be very important. These off season, when they get together, if they do it in the summer, hopefully they get together and get some reps, because that's going to come into play. The timing of a wide receiver and quarterback, getting that down. But other than that, like, the depth is a massive concern for me. We're still there. This team, offensive tackle, if Conklin goes down, you know, are they sure they have the guys in the building that can keep this train moving? Same thing at defensive end. I think they need to add another veteran edge presence. And we know they're thin at tackle just because they don't have their depth is unproven. So I think depth is still the biggest concern.
Yeah, I'm with you. What do you think of the additions to the offense? Is it enough? You got more. They signed Goodwin today. You went out and got Akins. I like that as a red zone kind of target. Is it enough to kind of unlock the full potential that this offense has with Deshaun Watson, do you think?
Well, they did 2 things. They raised the ceiling and the floor in the wide receiver room, you know, and I don't think they're feeling like they're going into a battle with not enough bullets now. I think they have enough NFL playable receivers that you're giving him the weapons. You go and get Akins, who someone he's familiar with. Like, you raised the ceiling in that room as well with the tight ends. So enough, only time will tell. But I definitely think that they have definitely given him more toys to play with and more areas that he can be successful in the passing game, because those receivers have different skill sets.
When you look at the free agency, they may still add a veteran defensive lineman. It's not going to be anything crazy. What do you think? Where do you think they go in this draft? Do you think they try to package some picks and move up? Do you think? And what positions do you think they address?
Well, that's what's hard to tell. You know, not picking till 74, it changes the complexity of getting someone you can play right away, depending on what room they go to. This draft is not a lot of premium position depth, but like the non-premium positions, tight end, running back. This draft's pretty deep. You know, you can get some playable pieces late, but some of those other positions, if you're not getting someone early, it might change the direction your draft goes. So at 74, I don't know if they're going to be able to get a defensive tackle that can play right away. You might get a guy that's kind of like a redshirt player, and I don't know if this team can afford to take one of those guys on right now.
Do you think they try to package those and move up into the second round? You got 2/3. Do you try to package those up, and if somebody falls, JOK is not necessarily a great example, but
no, but it gives you an example of what they're willing to do if the right guy drops. Definitely there's going to be guys they have their eyes on that if they start to fall, you might package out with one of your players and a pick to jump up and go get someone. So it's definitely in play. When you don't pick till 74, they're going to be looking for value anywhere they can get it. And traditionally with this front office, that means trading back. But if the right guy comes down, they showed with JOK, they are willing to go up. So it's definitely a possibility.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the side of the break. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, take a little bit deeper look at the new tight end, Jordan Akins for the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, how y'all doing today? I was just calling to get my thoughts on something as far as the receiver core goes. I honestly believe that the steps and progress that DPJ's been making year by year, I think he can take that step to actually be our number one receiver this year, especially seeing the chemistry that him and Watson had the last 6 games of the season. I'm just thinking he can elevate, and maybe not next year, but the year after that, and after Cooper's gone, or maybe that he may take the throne as the number one receiver. Do you guys believe that he has number one receiver potential? Just let me know. I was just wondering. I think we'll be great. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, DPJ is kind of interesting. I like him a lot. I think he is the type of receiver that every really good team has, because if you need, I said it earlier, if you need 6 yards, he's going to get you 6.5. A number one, I'm not sure. But I think you want him on your team, and I think all good teams have a receiver like him.
Yeah, I love DPJ. He has a very valuable skill set. And like the caller said, he's still ascending. We're still seeing him improve season over season over season. I just don't know if I see it for him being a number one. To be a number one in this league, you got to be able to perform when all eyes are on you, when you're getting all the attention, and you can still get open, despite the numbers disadvantage you might have if you're getting shaded over the top from a safety. I don't know if he's got that in him, but I think he can thrive in this offense, especially with the attention that Amari Cooper will get, putting speed on the field with Elijah Moore. I think that's going to open up his game. So I still expect him to still be ascending. I just don't think he has the ceiling of a number one wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There are so many different number one type receivers as well. I know you wrote an article about this for Dog Pound Daily. Jordan Akins, what do you think it does to the tight end, quote unquote, room as it is?
Well, I think the first thing off the top is it kind of makes Harrison Bryant expendable. I think that if you give Jordan Akins that kind of contract, 2 years, max up to 5.2 with a 3.9 base, they're not paying him that money to be tight end number 3. So I don't think they're going to pay Harrison Bryant 2.7 to be tight end number 3 either. I think it makes him expendable. Now, that might be something you see as the draft approaches. They might be able to package him with a pick to move whatever way they need to move in the draft. It gives them flexibility. He only carries a $192,000 dead cap. You kind of juxtapose that with what he's going to get paid. I think it's pretty obvious he's not going to be on the roster come opening day. But I think they'll hold on to him to see if they can use him as a trade asset. But as far as the addition of Jordan Akins into this offense, he's got really good length. He's really good up the seams. He's got a good rapport with Watson, good yards after the catch. He's something that will endear him to these fans is when he catches it and turns upfield. If you're in his way, he's going to put pads on you. He's going to try to go through you to get that first down. And that's someone it's easy to get behind that kind of tight end.
Yeah, the other thing is, we had talked a little bit earlier in the show about the scramble drill with Watson. This is a guy that's done it with him. There is a familiarity that it's what everybody wants to get to. He's there.
Yeah, he's had to freelance before. And there's some of the players, when you go back and watch the tape, where he just knows where to be, and he's not one of those big names that everyone was looking at, going into free agency. But it was the perfect pairing to get on this as the second tight end. And especially in an offense that's going to become more vertical, he gives you more of those capabilities from the tight end position.
I'm with you. And he and Njoku in the seam with Deshaun Watson, be aware of that because it's coming. That is a big part of what Deshaun Watson can do. 3 more moves that would make this the Browns' perfect offseason. This again from Dog Pound Daily. So number 3, still add another defensive tackle in the draft. Number 2, Browns need to bring in Jerick McKinnon. That's a running back that can catch the ball. And number 1, Browns should sign Yannick Ngakoue. I get behind any of those. The cap is shrinking a little bit. They're probably I didn't see what the Goodwin contract numbers were, but they're probably a little bit over 6.5, 7, something like that.
Yeah, when I look at that, the defensive tackle kind of plays into, can they get someone at 74 who can play right away? Because they definitely, in my opinion, still need someone to start next to Tomlinson. I don't know if you can do that in the draft. And are they going to carry 5 defensive tackles? I kind of doubt it. Those dart throws earlier in free agency at Hurst and Hill, we'll kind of see where those play out through training camp, but you're looking at Winfrey and Tomlinson. I don't know if any of the other guys who are currently on the roster will be on the roster. I highly doubt it, kind of looking at the way this thing's moving. So I don't know if they will draft defensive tackle now. They need to keep throwing bodies at this problem until the problem is solved. So I wouldn't doubt they'd take a flyer. I just don't know if they'll use that at 74. And McKinnon, it comes down to me, can they get him on a 1-year deal? If they can, and it's cost prohibitive, I think that they jump on something like that. He's an excellent receiving back out of the backfield. He gives you a couple different levels of dynamic ability as a pass catcher. But I think the writing's on the wall. We're seeing all the additions at the wide receiver room. This team is trending towards becoming pass heavy, which 2 years down the line means you're probably not going to be able to re-sign Nick Chubb. Now, that'll hurt me and it'll hurt a lot of other fans, but it's just the way this thing's trending. So they have to have someone in the pipeline to kind of step into that role when that day comes. So I can see them also in the draft picking up another running back.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And as far as
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, the Yannick Ngakoue, when it comes to they do need another edge defender in my estimation, a veteran presence. It doesn't have to be him specifically, but it has to be Yannick Ngakoue type, whether that's Frank Clark, Ngakoue. But it comes down to the price tag. If you're going to get someone at $6 to $8 million per season, I think you can go that route. When that price tag gets to 11 to 13, I think you got to step away. They got to find someone in their sweet spot. I just wonder who that's going to be. And it could be someone who's on a roster right now who's going to get cut.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you know what? If you get another piece or two on that defensive line that you can plug in and you can feel, doesn't have to be great, doesn't have to be Pro Bowl, but is a solid NFL veteran, let's go play. I'm with you.
Yep. You got to fill in the gaps.
Yep. Casey Kinnamon, Dog Pound Daily, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Casey.
Hey, anytime. You guys have a great weekend.
All right. Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out, Dog Pound Daily. Each week, in conjunction with the Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program, we recognize a role model student from somewhere across the state of Ohio. Today, we head to Ottawa-Glandorf High School, Putnam County, to meet Colin White. White is a junior at Ottawa-Glandorf. Last 2 seasons, he's been first-team All-State on the basketball court for the Titans. He is also one of the top students in his class. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is proud to salute Colin White from Ottawa Glandorf High School, this week's Shining Star. Basketball means a lot at Ottawa Glandorf High School. The home gym is called the Supreme Court, and when a toddler in the area picks up a basketball, they dream of playing for the Titans, just like their current star, Colin White, did.
It's everything to be a basketball player in OG. You know, you dream of it as a kid to play at the Supreme Court back home and to come here and play a state championship game. You dream about it all through your childhood, and the support we get from our community is crazy. You know, at home, you can look up and there's not really an empty seat, and here you look up and there's 6,000 people here just cheering you on. So it's a great feeling to have that support from the community.
He's just one of those kids that you're just beyond thankful for that you have in your program. He is the face of our program, and he does it, you know, in such a respectful way. He's always there for the kids. He's always there for the younger kids. I mean, he treats my youngest son like he's, you know, like he's part of the team. And you know, when your leaders and your best players are that type of leaders, it makes your program just really go.
For the second season in a row, Colin White, a junior, was first-team All-State, and he led the Titans to the Division III state title game.
I feel like I'm shooting the pull-up jumper pretty well right now, and I'm shooting it pretty decent right now, and really getting to the rim and finding my teammates pretty well. I take a lot of pride, you know, rebounding and finding my teammates is one of the things that really motivate me to keep going out there and keep playing hard, and I feel like we did that today, and it's really paying off for us this year.
I just think the leadership. I think sometimes, you know, leadership gets used way too often, but it's when times are tough and when adversity hits, you know, you need your best to step up, and, you know, he's that guy, and he's that calming presence that we need on the floor, and like I said, he's genuinely happy for the success of others, and you know, I think that's something that you know, our kids and our youth can really, you know, really learn from.
As good as White is, he's never satisfied, always working endless hours to get better.
I'm really working on my outside shot and definitely my handles, which we've been doing all summer, and this past offseason we're definitely working on the outside shot and the dribbling, which is helped my game tremendously this year.
When you're one of the youngest in the family of a lot of kids and a lot of athletes, you know, you get humbled quick sometimes, and his older brother was always there to pick on him and to get after him. And he's one of those guys that wants to rise to the challenge, and the bigger the stage, the better. And, you know, like I said, I'm beyond thankful to have him, you know, wearing that blue and gold.
White will be back next year for his senior season with the Titans, and he'll have plenty of college options after that. Cincinnati, West Virginia, Iowa, Toledo, and Illinois State are among 12 Division I offers Colin has, and that number continues to grow this spring.
I'm looking for a winning program and a place where I can call home is one of my main things. I want to go to a place where I feel welcomed and a place where I fit in.
In the classroom, White shows the same hard work and determination that you see from him on the court. Colin is a 4-point student with a laser focus.
Grades are really important. My mom's always on me, get those grades up, but I want to be an engineer, so I have some pretty rigorous classes at the high school, and take a lot of time to get good grades, but it's going pretty well, I guess. Math, it's fun to finally get an end result, and getting an end result, it's a great feeling to get that final result, and for you to be right, that's the best part about it.
The work ethic and determination have set Colin White up for success, both on and off the court. If you know a student who deserves recognition, we want to hear about them, and you can nominate them completely online. Go to OhioLottery.com. Find the About section. Click on Partners in Education. There you will see links to nomination forms. Nominate that student as an academic all-star, and they could end up being featured as our next shining star. Well done, Colin White. Some other high school news. Friend of the program, Ted Ginn Sr., legendary coach of Glenville High School, as well as the creator of Ginn Academy, has been elected to the National High School Hall of Fame, the NFHS Hall of Fame, this year's class nationally. Ted Ginn Sr. from Glenville. Congratulations, Teddy. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will see you back here Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.